But this is a fascinating and very important source, which was exceptionally important for Yehuda Levi's work as well. Chastai ibn Shaprut, who I hope we will discuss in a few lectures when we look at Spain in the 10th century, very important diplomat who communicated with Jewish communities throughout the Mediterranean basin. And he was fascinated with the story of the Khazar conversion, which was known to him. And so he sent out some emissaries to try and reach Khazaria and find out, what's going on there? Are you guys actually Jewish? Is this actually a Jewish kingdom? Now, for reasons which will take us beyond the scope of our discussion, his emissaries did not succeed in reaching Khazaria or speaking with any actual Khazarians, but they did receive correspondence from someone who purported to have brought letters from a King Joseph of Khazaria. These letters are absolutely fascinating. They relate the story of the conversion of King Bulan. They talk about the nature of Khazarians, their Judaism, and all kinds of fascinating things. That was part of the range of Khazaria. In fact, the great Harvard historian Omelian Pritsak argued that Kiev may have been founded by Khazarian Jews, believe it or not. We have multiple references from Arab historians to a Jewish presence in Khazaria as well. And perhaps one of my favorite examples is in one of the most important early historical documents that describe the origins of the Kiev and the Rus population, which later would grow into modern-day Ukraine. It's also shared with the Russian Empire and the Polish Empire and so on. It's the so-called Povest Vremeniach Liet, or Chronicle of Bygone Years, which is essentially a church record of the history of the region. There's a fascinating description of a key element in the Christianization of the region, specifically the conversion of King Volodymyr, or Vladimir, to Eastern Orthodox Christianity. And amazingly, it's exactly like the story in the Khuzari. There is a representative of Islam. There are two representatives of Christianity, both Western and Eastern Christianity, and there is a representative of the Jews, and that representative is specifically a Khazarian Jew. And this is absolutely fascinating that not only do they replicate the story that is essentially told in the letters of Chastai ibn Shaprut with King Joseph, they actually report the same kind of scenario. Of course, it ends up that King Volodymyr decides to become Christian rather than Jewish. Could you imagine how history would have changed had he chosen to be Jewish? He very nearly did, by the way. But this is one of those data points that's really hard to ignore, speaking to the idea of a Jewish community in Khazaria at the time. And then finally, we've got some really tempting archaeological finds, like this coin found in the United Kingdom as part of the so-called Spillings hoard. There's a whole number of them that come from Khazaria around this time, like 8th, 9th century. This one writes in Arabic, sort of a paraphrase on the famous statement of Islamic faith. There is no God but Allah, and Moses is his prophet. Right? That's an unusual kind of statement there. And then there are some tempting examples of Jewish symbols on Khazar architecture, which is limited. There are not a lot of finds, but this menorah symbol from a Khazar archaeological dig is especially tempting. So all of these things come together to suggest that something really important happened in this region in the 8th century that involved Judaism. But what exactly happened?